Hi, I'm going to show you a quick tip on how to mask and work around these rubber seals on these pesky pickups.
Yep.
When it comes to time to work around your rubber seals, prep for paint, or even paint for that matter, you need to keep in mind on how you're going to attack these areas for sanding and prepping. Problem I always see are these tape lines where people are masking off. You rarely see, and there are people that can do it. I don't want to sound negative about it because some people can really mask these things off nice. Typically, you don't see that. Like this one here, the way it shows up here, you can see some of the white, the primer showing through, and the overspray on here. I'll bring you in and show you what I'm talking about and give you a few examples. So if you're asking why masking is so important, because when you have a finished paint job and you have things like this, there's overspray here, primer. You can still see primer underneath where the paint is. Wasn't masked off very well, let alone prepped or good. But you get this buildup right here, and it just doesn't look really good when you're trying to do a nice finished job. I'll show you another example. This was a little bit better job, but you can still see a paint line here. And that's important to some people to not have stuff like this. Right here, if you can see the white line, and even around the edge of the mirror. Some of this stuff is pretty easy to take off. It'd actually be more work probably to mask off some of these things rather than removing that. I could understand a handle, and you can see a little bit of that paint there. One thing I kind of discovered, I don't remember, I heard somebody mention this before quite a while ago, and I've done it a few times, and I really like how it comes out. To avoid having these messy and ugly tape lines where you're sanding, or especially where you're masking off for your paint and your primers, to do a really nice job, you need to get paint underneath that seal so that it looks nice and crisp and clean. So this is what I use cord, some rope. Basically how I've done it. It's kind of hard to do, takes a little bit of time, but if you can tuck this cord in underneath here, I don't know if you can see this, but this paint has actually glued that seal down as many times as that's been painted. But you get it going, it's pretty good. But just pack some of this cord in behind, and it lifts that seal up. I don't know if you can see that real good, but I got a pretty good gap here where I can actually sand underneath that seal. I can actually come in even ahead of time here and take some lacquer thinner and just kind of clean up this old paint and junk that's on here. And we're painting and sanding and doing all these things. So you don't have to, at this point, you don't have to worry too much about scratching things too bad. I mean, obviously you want to use some care. The less fibery the cord you get, the better. And you can even take a lighter to it and just kind of burn off all the fur, little hairs hanging out of it. But by doing this, I got a really big gap here. I'll bring you in and show you. Got a nice big gap in here to sand and actually make sure I get paint underneath that seal. And you can probably pack that cord in a little further or use a different size cord. You can maybe go smaller if you're too worried about the gap. Thing that I have a concern about is the amount of time you leave this cord in here. If you leave this cord in here a long time, it might affect this rubber. It might like stay up. If you leave it in too long, you pull the cord out and not lay down. So just kind of pay attention how long you're going to keep that in there. But I got a really big gap all the way around. Just do this all the way around. Tuck it in best you can. And when I'm done painting, I can carefully peel that out. That rubber seal will flap down over that fresh paint and it'll look really nice and clean. And it's easy to mask off the rubber this way too. You'll still want to mask off the rubber, obviously, but you don't have to worry about having a bad tape line because the tape's gonna cover the seal completely, and you don't have to worry about paint getting on your rubber seal, or for that matter, not getting underneath that seal. So it just looks really good. It looks real clean. It's kind of something I learned. I want to pass that on. Anyhow, it makes it a lot easier to get in there and sand when you can have that rubber up out of the way. But I need to go all the way around. Got to get the bottom here too. I need to sand and prep all this. Like there was a little run there. So I got a bunch of sanding. You can see how this last paint job the guy did. Looks like some high build primer, some primer and paint, and I don't think any of that high build was prepped. Just painted over all of it. So I got to sand a bunch of this off. Stuff like this, these runs. But anyhow, I got to prep all of this all the way across. Get up underneath this rubber seal all the way around. Back windows out, so there's no problems there. Anyhow, I hope this helps. I know this is kind of a quickie. I'm still doing a lot of sanding. There's a lot going on. And it just doesn't really seem like I'm getting very far because there's so much sanding. I'm about ready to shoot. Not so much on the cab yet. I got a bunch of this little sanding to do. But I got other panels I'm about ready to shoot that high build on. And then I'll be getting a little further, but still more sanding. A lot of sanding going on. So anyhow, thanks for watching. See you next time.